I wanted to write a story about a crime that took a very long time to solve, because I wanted to also describe changes in society during that time. And then I came up with the idea of using a serial killer, much because I read a book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, which is about a real killer. But I invented another fictional killer. And then I decided to have three characters, which were three police women who worked during different periods of time, because that would enable me to write a story about how women in the police force have been treated and how they've been working during the 40s, the 70s, the 80s, and in present time, which is the periods that I zoomed in on, basically. When I started out and did my research, that was never important. But then I learned while doing research that police women in Sweden had a really hard time in the police force when they started to work as police officers in 1958. And their biggest opponent was their own union, for example. So the more I found out about these women, and I also met with police women of different ages and conducted interviews, I understood what they had gone through, and through their stories, I think that my book became more feminist than I had planned or than I had set out to do. It was something that was inevitable when I understood what they had gone through. You asked about the narration of the book, which is slightly different to the other books, and it's simply because I wanted to tell a story that stretches over a very long period of time. So we actually start the story in Stockholm, 1944, and then we end in present day. And to be able to do that, I had to use several characters who were living and working during those periods of time. So I chose a few time periods to focus on, and it was the 40s, the 1970s, the 80s, and present time. So it was, to be able to tell this story, I had to use a different technique, a different narration technique than I'd used for the other stories. So in terms of documentation, this was a unique book because I needed to do so much research. I'd never done that before. There's always research when you write books. You always talk to policemen, and you talk to prosecutors or forensic experts. But this was different. This was trying to describe the 1940s and the 1970s, even up to present day. So I had to read books. I had to talk to people who had worked as policemen and policewomen during those times. And I went to the library and I looked through, really old papers to find articles about policemen. So that was really a unique process for me. This is a book that is a part of a series, but all of them are pretty much, you can read them standalone, and that's how I want it. So I want you to be able to just read one book or two or all of them and still feel connected to the universe. You have these characters that pop up in every book. You have these places that pop up, but it's not like a normal series where you have to start with number one and then number two, and you have the same policeman solving different murders, because I think that would make me really bored. I feel a need to really reinvent myself and reinvent my books every time I write a new book. Otherwise I will be bored, and then I fear it will be really boring for the reader if I'm not enjoying it while writing it. I've just started a new book and I've only written 50 pages, so I think it's kind of early to say exactly what it's going to be about. It's very sensitive when you have this new project. You need to really feel that it's working before you talk about it. But in a way, it's a different book, but you will meet some of the characters again and some of the places. So I think you will feel at home in the universe, in the whole in the book, but at the same time it's also a standalone book.